talked about, for those of you who registered, we talked about how we're going to accelerate your growth. There's no quick wins in sales, but there are a few quick changes we can make in the business that will see some quicker results. For those of you who haven't met me, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Maria Armstrong. I am the manager of the Pax8 Academy here in the APAC region. I do our sales coaching. I have a very long period in the IT industry, working in sales management, business management. So that's my experience. I'm joined by Mike, Brad, and Claire, also from the Pax8 team, in our New Zealand branch, for our New Zealand office. First and foremost, before you get started on anything else, we need to have processes, we need to have approach, we need to have that side organized, and we're going to talk about processes and operational approach and some techniques you can try. But the first thing I'm going to ask you to consider is what a sales rep looks like. I want you to consider, when you think sales rep, what do you think of? Because when I ask this question of most people, this is what they tell me. They tell me, oh, someone who's nagging me, someone who doesn't listen, someone who's hassling, who tries to sell me something I don't need, someone who's manipulating me. And the problem we have with this is that if we think of this as a sales rep, then we don't want to be a sales rep ourselves. And so we don't try to be a sales rep. So the biggest change we need to make before we say we're going to be selling is to change our mindset and to think of ourselves as problem solvers, because that's all sales reps are. They need to listen to the problems of the clients and they need to come up with solutions. So why did you start your business? Why do you do the job you do? Why did you get out of bed to come to work today? How are we going to change the world for our customers? What differences are we going to make for them? How are we going to use technology to change their business? These are all solutions we can provide for our clients. So two very different pictures. Same situation. They're both on a date. They're both supposedly having a conversation. You can see there's a very different vibe here. One is connecting. One is definitely not. But the one that is definitely not, we call seller deficit disorder. How many times have you sat there and had someone sell at you, talk at you, pitch at you? Because more often than not, they've come in and they've presented to you about their products, about their services, without actually knowing what you need, without asking you the questions before and trying to solve your problem. And this is why we think, well, sales reps are trying to sell me something that I don't want, that I don't need. They're just trying to manipulate me into buying something. I'm not a salesperson because I don't do that. So how do we combat that? Well, we find out their purpose. We ask the right questions to find out their purpose, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Your prospects don't think you understand their business problems. So we find out what their business pain points are. We find out what their products are that they sell, what their services are. You might have limited access within their organization. Have you built relationships at all levels of the organization, or do you have limited relationships within the organization? If you only have a relationship with one person in an organization, you don't have an account management strategy within your clients. You need to have a relationship at all levels, or that account is at risk. If your solution is perceived as expensive, you haven't solved the value. They need to find someone who meets the same purpose as them, and then they will see the value. We are becoming more and more a purpose-driven society. As individuals, we align our buying power and our buying decisions with businesses who align with our purpose and our vision for life. And the businesses you're selling to are owned by people. So if your purpose aligns with their purpose, if your path in your business and your approach aligns with theirs, you will find that your values will align. If you haven't positioned your offerings, you'll be seen, they will not be able to differentiate between you and the next MSP down the road. You'll be commoditized. So if they can just say, well, I mean, you're really just fixing my computer, then you've been commoditized. That's no different to Yeah, you're really just supplying my electricity. You're really just supplying my internet. You're a commodity. How do you make a difference? We talk about being that trusted advisor. We talk about providing advice, stepping into the shoes of somebody who can make a difference to them. That takes a different approach. Selling services, selling recurring services is a very different approach to selling a laptop, selling one-time revenue. Selling one-time revenue or selling single projects can become a commodity without the advice. Value you provide is not clear if your sales team doesn't have the tools to provide the offerings, to clearly articulate the offerings. So I love a good dog picture. I love this one particularly because of the ears. The 2 ears and 1 mouth, and use them proportionally to combat clients who feel like they're not being listened to. The key is more listening, and that seems counterintuitive to a sales approach, because we feel like we should be pitching, we feel like we should be leaping in and selling something to them, but in fact listening is the number one step to better selling, to solution-led selling. So why are we here today? We're going to learn how to speak to different kinds of prospects, to figure out the different stakeholders and connect with the buyer. We'll look to increase your year-over-year MRR growth, look at how you can qualify your prospects and increase your margin. So we love a good acronym in IT. This one's a little bit questionable, but I still use it because it helps us to remember something. So tech, it's what we do. We do tech. We talk about people buying from people they know, like, and trust. How do we build that rapport? How do we build that trust? So trust and true rapport tech. Establish the need, we connect the value, and we handle the objections. They're the 4 steps in selling. We have to build that trust. We have to build it really early. We build it really early by getting in there and asking the right questions and listening to the prospect or the client. I'm going to use the terms prospect and client interchangeably. You can use everything that I'm talking about today. We can use it with both, in some cases, with both existing clients and with prospects. So there's a bit at the end that's just for your existing clients, and there's a bit in the middle that can be used interchangeably. This is really important, whether this is with your existing clients or with your prospects. Are they ready to buy? We're going to ask some questions about whether they're just tire kicking or are they wasting your time. Sometimes people, you have really good conversations and they come back 6 months, 8 months, 12 months later, and they're ready to buy then because you had a really great conversation all that time ago and you didn't pitch your product, but they weren't ready to buy and you knew it and you didn't waste months and months and months of time chasing after them. You just let it lie because you both had a conversation about the fact that they weren't ready to buy. But this gives you the space to understand that. As I said, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. If they don't know you before the meeting, how do they establish that like and trust? So we build rapport, we ask questions. So I'm sure everybody prepares for a meeting before they walk in. You jump online, you ask around. Anyone else in the business heard of this company that I've never met before? I'm going to have a look at their website. Maybe it's good, maybe it's terrible. I'm going to have a look at them on LinkedIn. I'm going to do a bit of research on the industry. I don't know much about this industry. We've never serviced them before. Maybe I know a load because they're a vertical that we play in all the time. And I'm going to prepare some questions. So maybe they're stock standard questions that I ask all prospects. Maybe based on the fact that it's a new industry, I'm going to add a few additional questions. Part of my research might be, do I have any mutual connections on LinkedIn? Oh, actually, we've got a load. Okay, I'll take note of that. What else do I know from a client perspective? They're an industry we play in all the time. Okay, we service a number of businesses of a similar size in the same industry. So these are all things that I would obviously prepare before going in to see a client. Now we're in the building trust and understanding stage. We're letting them know that we're there to learn about their business. What's a lay of the land question? It is what it says on the tin. What does the land look like? What does the business look like today? What's the structure of things going on? How many employees work here? And this is key. We're letting them know that we've done our research on them. Besides what's listed on your website, how many other locations do you have? So we're letting them know that we're not going in blind. We've done our work. How many of your users are computer users? How many of your employees are computer users? These are all things that we might ask or not, depending. So that particular question comes out of one of our partners who does a lot of work in the aged care industry, where you have a lot of employees, you have very minimal employees in the office who have a computer, and then you have a lot of employees who maybe only just have a mobile phone or a tablet. And so your licensing or your support is a very different approach when you're looking at that. And that particular, I work with a number of partners who have verticals very heavily in that particular service space. And so they've built packages that are particularly focused around supporting non-computer users. So their packages look very different. And you need to consider that when you're looking at your client base or the verticals that you're talking to. So these are the sort of questions. And then you're getting a feel for their business, a feel for how open they want to be with you. Instead of how many employees work here, you could say something like, LinkedIn shows me this many employees work here. How accurate is that number? That shows you've had a look at their site, their page on LinkedIn. It also shows that, it reminds them that perhaps their LinkedIn page is a little bit out of date. I said that to somebody recently and they said, why are you telling me that number? It's at least 3 times that. And I said, telling you what LinkedIn said. And they went and checked and said, oh, that's completely wrong. So there's different ways to ask the same question, but it builds a conversation. We're looking to not just ask questions that can be yes, no, single word answers. We're looking to build a conversation, which builds rapport. And then we get to our power questions or our lead questions. These ones are my favorite questions. These questions get into the meat of the technology and what they want from us, what they want from us as a provider, what they want from us from technology, what their vision for the future of their business is. It's not about where things are today, it's about where the future is going. Some of the great ones to take note of: how do you plan your technology budget every year? This can be asked for your existing clients as well as your prospect clients. If you don't know the answer to this for your existing clients, it's worth asking. If they don't plan a technology budget, how important is IT in their business? If they say, nah, we don't really plan, we just kind of spend when we need to, it's not an important point. That's something they need to be educated on. That's something you need to educate them on. If your existing clients aren't planning for technology spend, then you need to be providing them with a technology budget before the coming financial year. You need to say, this is your proposed technology spend based on what we've discussed over the last period of time. We're proposing these improvements. You start educating them on how we improve the business. Start talking about operational challenges, because you as the technology provider can improve their operations with technology. That can make a massive difference for their business. Absolutely huge. But they're not going to know about it unless you tell them. You're a problem solver. So solve their problems. Use technology to solve their business problems. What's your time frame for making a change? That's a follow-up question. But if they say, oh, I'd really love to do X, Y, Z. Oh, that sounds fantastic. What's your time frame for making a change? And they say, oh, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years. Oh, okay, that's a fairly long time. Let's see if we can work from bringing that forward. Don't ask them who their decision maker is, because everybody loves to be the decision maker. So if you're talking to middle management in your client, don't ask them who the decision maker is. Ask them what their decision making process is. they're more likely to tell you, oh, well, I will take this to my boss, who'll take this to the board, and then you can ask some follow-on questions like, oh, that's fantastic. So when's the board likely to meet, and would they like some additional information? It gives you more information and more scope to be able to have that conversation. What you're looking to build when you create your own power questions, what you're looking to do, again, we don't want a single question that they can answer yes or no to. These are conversation sparking questions. These are ones that they have to answer with information. So to create your own power questions, your easy to remember acronym is TED. Tell me about, explain to me, describe to me. And if you start any of your questions with either of those three, they have to describe to me what you do when. They can't say yes or no to that. When we're selling, we're very good in our industry at presenting numbers, facts and figures and numbers and statistics. And it's rather boring and it doesn't land very well with our clients. Psychological research shows us that data presented as a story is 22 times more memorable than facts alone. Here's me giving you statistics and numbers. But so how do we do that? So if you go into your client, you've asked them a whole lot of questions, you've listened to all of their challenges, and you've got a solution for them. So you need to prove it by telling stories. Now, we're not telling fables. We're not telling made up stories. We're telling actual case studies. And by case studies, I don't mean that you need to go out and hire a marketing company and write up this amazing marketing case study with your existing client base. It can be as simple as ask an existing client for a one-sentence comment on how well the latest project went, or whether they like whether they're happy with your services. Most of your clients will comply as long as they put it in writing in an email and say that they're willing for you to use it. And if they don't, you don't actually have to use their name. You could say, do you know what? We have a client who is of a similar size to you. We had a challenge where they had a server go down, and we had this approach, and our team rallied, and we did the following, and we managed to restore it within X period of time. You've given specifics. You've met the need in that you've told them a story that aligns to their perhaps industry, their business size, their location, without giving them any information about who the client is. I will often, when I'm running training, tell stories about a partner that I work with. And here in the Asia Pacific region, we have about 4,000 partners, give or take, and I work with a lot of them. And very often I'll tell quite detailed stories about a partner that I've worked with. And I may even do it today. And at no point will I tell you the name of the partner or the location or any identifying details. But all the facts that I tell you are absolutely accurate. And people say, oh, well, you gave us all the details. And I said, yes, do you know who it is? And they go, no idea at all. But they know, based on the information I did give, that it was accurate. Now, I have since had a testimonial from that partner, and I am allowed to use their name, and I will at some point get that nicely written up and have it look wonderful, and that will be part of our actual testimonials and everything else. But I have been using the story of the work I've done with that particular partner for a year, because I didn't want to hamper the delay with getting them nice marketing write-up and all of things. And that's the issue. So often people say, oh, but I don't have the time to get the marketing and all the amazing stuff written up and on our website and all of those things. As I said, be relevant to the buyer and be defensible. So you can defend it. You can say, well, legitimately happened. You're not telling tales. Okay, so if you've gone through the whole process, and we only have an hour today, so I'm not going to deep dive into an entire sales process, because usually when I go through sales training, it's about 4 hours long. So we would spend a lot more time going into a lot of this information. But let's say we've gone through an entire process and we're feeling fairly confident, and we present them with the proposal and they object. So more often than not, it's unanswered questions. However, most of the time, it's indecision. Preference for the status quo is driven by humans feeling that indecision is safer than decisions. It's a safety thing. So you need to help them feel that they are safe and confident in making a decision to change. It's part of human nature that change is daunting. And when we're looking at a big change, if you're looking at changing IT providers or making a massive change, if it's a small change, if it's, look, I just need you to add a few licenses, or I need you to just do a little shift within your business, something little to an existing client, that's going to be a very different sale. That's more just about, getting them to sign something. That's going to be very different. But if it's a big change within their business, if it's disruption, it's a psychological thing. It's extremely difficult for salespeople to detect, and it becomes your job as the salesperson, because remember, we've done that mindset shift. We're all salespeople now, much as there's a lot of people who say they don't want to be a salesperson. So you've got to dive deeper into being a problem solver to try and detect that indecision. It becomes asking more questions to get to the root of the problem and find out why they feel uncomfortable to make a decision. What we don't want, and we looked earlier, taking the temperature, what we don't want is indecisiveness. We want a firm yes or a firm no. At no point do we want to, maybe. There's no maybes in sales. It's a yes or it's a no. That indecisiveness we can't have. It's usually driven by fear. And depending again on who we're talking to within the business, it's fear of making a decision because it could impact their role. It could be seen negatively. Are you talking to the right person in the business? Sometimes they don't even know that they're being indecisive. It can be fun to investigate why. Think of yourself. Again, you're a problem solver. Sales is a journey. It can be a fun journey. So you will often encounter objections at all different stages, and it's worth uncovering the different stages of where you're encountering your objections. But generally speaking, we get them at the proposal stage if they've not been handled earlier. So many of you might have heard of the term BANT. BANT in sales terminology stands for budget. So when we're talking questions, we wouldn't go in there and be like, have you got money? Are you going to pay me? Because that makes us an icky, revolting salesperson that we saw at the beginning. And none of us want to be that. So we're going to ask the right questions to uncover the information. How much do you typically spend on similar services? What does your budget approval process look like? Authority, again, who's our decision making? What's our decision making process? Another one for authority, sort of loosely falls into authority. What's your timeline for making change? I think that's actually a timing one. Are there other stakeholders involved in this decision making process? What are your top priorities? What does success look like for you? One I always like is if we're sitting down, when we sit down and have coffee in a year's time, are we toasting to success? What are we talking about as a successful completion to this project? 3 months time, 6 months time, however long we're proposing the project takes. If it's a service and we're setting some goals and we say, right, these are our goals. We've hit the goals when. And timing. When do you want it by is not going to land very nicely. But are there any upcoming events or changes that could impact the timing? You're asking you know, can I get you to sign this sooner rather than later? But that makes it sound a bit revolting, and we don't want to be that person. So are there any upcoming events? Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going on holidays for 2 months. Okay, great. That's good to know. Do you want to sign before you go on holidays? We can do the onboarding now. Have it sorted out. Okay. Now we're going to get a little bit into some of the operations piece. So we've done a little bit of talking to the clients, some of the sales side, some of the fun sales part. Now we're going to get into some of the admin management part, which is also fun, depending on your flavour. Do you know your sales numbers? This one, I get different answers from people depending on who I'm talking to and when I'm talking to them. Do you currently measure your sales efforts? Do you have a clear sales pipeline? Could you hand over next week to another sales rep? And if you're not a sales manager, if you're a sales rep, do you have a sales manager who could look at your numbers and understand them? And if you answered no to any of these, you've got a little bit of work to do. Now, what do we do? We're going to talk about measuring your sales efforts and some things to do around that. And from a clear sales pipeline, it doesn't need to be tools and techs and amazing. I'm not asking you to rush out and purchase a management system for your pipeline. If you have a PSA today, it'll have a sales management component in there. Pop it in there. If you don't have anything, use a spreadsheet. Have everything in one central place. What are you selling? What are you proposing to sell? When are you proposing to sell it by? Who are you selling it to? Get it all in the one place. Everyone's stuff all in the one place. No disparate systems. It should all be in one central location and everyone should be able to see it all together. Ideally in the one system together. As I said, if you have a PSA, it works well in there. Could you hand over next week to another sales rep? Notes are fantastic. So if you're off sick, if you decide to go on a wonderful holiday for a month, could somebody jump in and sell, keep the business going? Could a manager step in and keep the business going? Could a manager come and look at your numbers and go, I completely understand what's going on here in this pipeline, without going, excuse me, what's going on with this deal? How's this looking? What's happening here? If they can't, if they have to ask questions, there's not enough information in a deal. That's what we should get to. Now, it takes about 6 months, depending on how much you've got in your pipeline, somewhere between 3 and 6 months to get your pipeline up to speed if it's a total mess. So don't expect it to be humming beautifully and looking pristine straight away if it's a mess today. Okay, as I said, where is your pipeline? Really important to track it, and I'll talk about why that is. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't have too many steps. Think about what your sales process is today and align your pipeline management steps with that. I've seen too many companies, MSPs, fall down because they build out this super complicated pipeline management process, but their sales reps go through 5 steps to sell to the clients. But it's been working pretty well. And then they've got 15 steps in their lovely new pipeline, and the sales reps aren't keeping track of what goes where because they just go through these 5 steps. So it falls down. Nobody's updating it. So have a think about that. Make sure you're tracking your opportunities. Again, we're problem solvers here. So we're monitoring where the opportunities are getting caught or where they're finishing and falling off the board. So something is going on at some point. Is it our quoting? Is it our pricing? Is it our conversation point? At what point are we slowing down? At what point are we losing our deals? So this is our problem solving. Once we start tracking this really carefully, and once we have, with extensive data comes so much possibility. We can start to see patterns. We can start to be problem solvers. So I've done some really amazing problem solving with some pipeline with opportunity boards that have been beautifully cleaned up. Again, it'll take you a quarter, maybe 2 quarters if you're starting from scratch. If you've already got a pipeline that's been running really nicely and you're starting to actually monitor them, you'll be able to start to see those problems. You'll be able to start to see the problem-solving opportunities pretty quickly. Okay, now, the reason we do this is not just from a sales perspective. The key to managing a pipeline, the key to having a really good pipeline is the ability to be able to run the entire business. Why do we have this? Well, if we have an opportunity for a really huge Azure deal and the opportunity says it's likely to close in September, but our main Azure tech, who's incredibly switched on and will be the main project engineer on that, wants to go on holidays in September, what happens? We need that tech. In September, when the opportunity's closing, we've communicated to the client that we could get started as soon as the deal's due to close. We'd have an annoyed client or an annoyed tech who really wants to go on holidays. What do? This becomes part of managing the business and communicating between the teams. Why do we constantly have miscommunication between projects and service and sales? And part of that is because we don't use our opportunities as part of that communication process. So use it for decision making in the wider business. What if we say, well, we've got this due to close in September. You know what? We've got time to ramp up and cross-train some of our other engineers and get them up to speed. So maybe we can start considering letting our other tech go on holidays or pushing back that client and telling them, in fact, they have to wait till October because they didn't make a decision in time. Indecisiveness. Okay, so now we're getting into the meat of the thing of what we're doing with our existing clients. And this is the traffic light system. So just so we're all clear, I'm based in Australia and I do know that red is not good. Red means stop. So, and it's the same globally. I know this, I guess, as I said, we're speaking to people from all over the APAC region. Red is not good, it's stop. We don't want red in any of our clients. Orange or amber is, look, it's not good, it's slow down. But green is good, green is go. So just clarifying that for everybody. So we want all of our clients to be good. We want all of them green is go, and we want them all to be in the green. Are all your clients in the green? Are they all in the green across every single product or service that you sell to them? And do you know that? So what I want you to do, I'm going to give homework. I'm setting homework because I love setting homework. So you're going to do this. Run a report, if you can, out of your system to show overall profitability across the different products or services you sell. So we're looking at, and I didn't list them out because everyone's going to sell different things. So you're looking at recurring services, you're looking at recurring product, looking at one-time product, and one-time project revenue. And then I want you to break it down by each client. So client A, and then the 4 different buckets. Client B, and the 4 different buckets. We're going to look at it in the different ways. So you're going to look at all of your recurring services across all of your clients and identify that as a line of business. Is just recurring services profitable? Yes, no. Just recurring product profitable across all your clients? Yes, no. And then you're going to break it down by each of your clients. It's a bit of a project, but here's the thing. Just looking at just the vertical columns for each of the 4 buckets, or maybe you have 5, or maybe you only have 2. If you look at just those lines of business, we have a partner who did this exact project about 18 months ago, and he said, oh, all my business is profitable, and his business was profitable. It was a great profitable business. And he went away and did this and came back and said, oh, well, my business as a whole is incredibly profitable, but one of my lines of business was actually in the red. The others were all making up for it, and I hadn't realized because he'd lumped in one of his lines of business with another. And it wasn't until he broke it out that he realized that it wasn't profitable. And so he increased the prices on just that one line of business, and instantly his profits jumped. So without actually going out, and it wasn't a drastic amount, but without actually going out and having to hit the town, speak to every client, do a massive amount of sales work, a small change made a huge difference to the profitability of his business. And then if you look at it across each of your clients, you're looking at, are you profitable for every single one of your clients? And this is where we start to really traffic light them. So we've traffic lighted, we traffic light your clients now across all 4 buckets and individually. But what we find is when we look at the clients individually, that's where we find that we'll have clients in the red. And I worked with a partner recently who said, oh, all my clients are profitable. And I said, great, fabulous, run the report for me. And they came back a week later and said, I've got clients in the red. And I said, okay. So it pretty much most of the time people find clients who are close to the red. Now, my recommendation, if you find clients who are red or amber, push the report longer, look further back, because we have clients who have blips. They have a particularly bad service month or quarter. Let's look at them longer. If they're a client who's constantly calling, perhaps they're spending a lot of time, particularly extra time from a service perspective, then they are costing you money. Then they are in the red. There's something going wrong. They need to be investigated further. These are all things that we need to break down. We need to know the numbers on our clients. This is dramatic profit increase. The next one, white space analysis. I love this one. This is, for want of a better term, for those of us who remember and are old enough, back in the day, you used to go through a drive-through and you used to get asked if you wanted fries with that. We're offering fries with that. We're looking at what have we sold? What have we sold to our clients? What have we not sold to our clients? More importantly, why haven't we sold it? And how can we sell it? So there are white space mapping tools out there. You can go out and buy some fantastic tools. There are some amazing technology out there available to you today. But again, don't overcomplicate it. What I don't want you to do, what I don't want to hear is you say to me in 3 months' time, oh, I haven't started mapping my clients because I'm waiting to load up and sync and no. No, we don't wait for that stuff. You can start today. This is something super simple. We start with a spreadsheet. You put all your clients down one column and all your products across the spreadsheet. And you say, do my clients have my base level managed services? Are they buying my security product? Are they still on a break fix model? Because I was talking to somebody the other day who said, I've got clients on a break fix model. I've got some on my managed services. And yes, I can provide a copy of the spreadsheet. Absolutely. And so, look at your products. Now, there's a couple of ways you can use this. So firstly, we're going to look across at the client. So if we looked at client B, we can look at that and say, right, we're looking across the client and saying, what can we sell to that particular client? But we can also look down the columns and we can say, I can see a gap in a particular product. I can create a mini campaign and I can filter it by this particular product, and I can look at the dozen clients I've got who aren't buying Azure Virtual Desktop from me, but I really want to sell it. And I've got an idea for a little mini campaign, becomes the same talking point in conversation, and I go out and I hit those dozen clients. Or maybe I invite them to a lunch and learn or a little webinar, or, it means that you can have a small targeted approach to just those clients for just that one line of business. So once you see this, I've got another partner who I was working with who started filling this out from a sales perspective, and their service desk manager walked past their desk and looked at it and went, oh, this is what I've been needing. What do you mean? Well, this solves a problem. We've got clients who've been having issues, and now that I can see it all laid out in one screen together, I can see there's these two completely different businesses that I thought had completely different systems, but now that I see it, they've actually got the same setups, very similar, and they've got the same mix of products. Can I have a copy of this once you're finished with it? So it can actually be used in multiple different ways in the business. Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about the rule of 78. For those of you who haven't heard about it, we are going to get started on this today. You have plenty of time left in the day, even though you're in New Zealand and a couple of hours ahead of me here in Australia. You have plenty of time to get started. The reason we work on the rule of 78 is because it multiplies. Recurring revenue multiplies. As you can see here, if you sell $1,000 a month, increase your $1,000 a month additional every single month, that's worth $78,000 after a year. So if you leave it for a month, you're missing out. You have to madly scramble to catch up. It impacts you greatly. So when I said, you know, if you sit there and say to me, oh, I haven't started on my white space analysis because I'm trying to figure out which tool to set up and which this and which that and which the other, why? We need to get started straight away, because for every month, 2 months, 3 months you wait, I've worked with MSPs for long enough, and I know that we get excited by the really cool tech that we can use in the business. And yeah, we can, but you can also get started straight away while you're getting the cool tech set up. There is some cool tech, and I will recommend it if you ask me, as long as you get started. So your best time to get started is now. So your sales rule, law of 30. Whatever you do over the next 30 days, you will typically see impact 90 days from now. Monday, the 6th of October is 90 days from now. So would you like to have the last quarter of this calendar year to be a fantastic quarter? Would you like to? So if you do an amazing next 30 days of business, you will have a fantastic last quarter of the calendar year, according to the sales rule of 30. We're going to set some goals. Write down your goal, sales goal, break it down into parts. Choose a reward for yourself. Get started and celebrate. Make sure you recognize that you've done well, achieved your goal, tried to achieve your goal, challenged yourself, and then keep setting higher goals. So we've got some on-demand training available with Academy, which Pax8 partners can log in and check out. I recommend. As I said, this was an hour, so there's only so much I can cover in an hour. We do have some other additional training resources. You can email me. I've got my email here available and the Academy email available. Please feel free to reach out, get in touch. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, get involved. Let me know if you would like any information. That's it from me. That was a little bit. Is there any questions?